I'm going to walk you through what we call the 3 ways that schools serve multilingual learners, or if we're using the federal designator, English learners. And I want you to think about how well you think that your school or your district, or if you work at the state agency, how well your state is attending to the needs of multilingual learners in this way. So the first way, we're going to go all the way over to the right, is direct service. Direct service is explicit, targeted academic language support independent of general education content. So this is time when multilingual learners are working directly with someone who is certified or licensed to teach English as a new language, or we'll call it English language development, ELD, for the purposes of today. So this might be pull out. It might be a class that is specifically for newcomers, anytime that our multilingual learners are working directly with someone who is certified in ELD. All right, the next way in which schools serve multilingual learners is through integrated service. Integrated service is explicit, targeted academic language support in the general education classroom or while using general education content. So now we have brought the gen ed curriculum and or teachers in tandem with the ELD teachers. This might present as co-teaching. This might present as a sheltered class. So when an ELD teacher gets curriculum that's a gen ed curriculum and modifies it for their space. So I want you to think about how well do you think that your school or your schools are attending to the needs of multilingual learners in integrated service. Now, the last one here, all the way over to the left, indirect service. This is explicit, targeted academic language instruction in all general education lessons. Now, this is when the ELD teacher is not in the room. How well do you think the language development needs of multilingual learners are being met when they're in a gen ed teacher-led class and the ELD teacher is not in the room? Definitely the one that stands out as the area for the most need is indirect service, which is always the case. What we notice is that this is the time when it's the most time in the day that multilingual learners are spending, and it is the area in which schools tend to feel that they're not adequately meeting the needs of kids who are learning English while they're learning the content. I want to point out, just noticing the arrows for indirect service is the longest, right? And so this really establishes a need for why we need to have a school-wide approach to meeting the needs of multilingual learners, so that our multilingual learners are not, waiting for the time that they're with that certified ELD teacher in order to engage with content, in order to get to know other people, in order to learn. We find that sometimes having those interruptions in language learning is really, it's disruptive, and it makes our learners not feel like they're part of a community. So this model, the school-wide English learning model, offers exactly that, an uninterrupted language and learning experience throughout the day. All right, you can go ahead and advance now. So the SWEL framework prepares all educators to support English learners, and I'll share that this is based on a federal grant from the U.S. Department of Education called the ELM project. So this is based on 6 years of statewide research in the state of Minnesota. ESOL SWEL prepares ELD teachers to share their expertise through delivering professional development and providing peer coaching to their general education colleagues. This collaboration leverages site-based teacher leadership to advance multilingual learner academic success in all grades and content area classrooms. So I'll share briefly that, we recognize the need in the state of Minnesota, where we have more refugees per capita than any other state, depending on the year. We recognize that there was a really serious need to prepare our gen ed teachers to meet the varied needs of multilingual learners in their classroom. And we didn't have any policy that was really holding them to meeting those needs. And so we saw this as a way to provide, not sit and invite an outsider in PD, rather contextualized, sustaining professional development from a community member of their own. All right, so the role of the SWEL coach, as we see it, is threefold, but I will say we work across the country and it doesn't look the same from one spot to the next. But one of the roles of the SWEL coach is to facilitate professional development for colleagues that ensures that language development is attended to in all classrooms. So our SWEL coaches write an annual action plan where they identify the needs of their gen ed colleagues and they provide professional development based on those needs. Next, they provide one-on-one and small group non-evaluative instructional coaching to colleagues to support language development in their classrooms. In some spaces, this looks like observing and giving feedback. In other spaces, this looks like co-planning or co-developing assessments, or even working in small groups, say with the second grade team, to develop lessons that are more linguistically appropriate for learners. So it can look a variety of ways, but this one is definitely targeted and based on the specific lesson and pedagogy of a teacher. Lastly, to serve as a resource for administrators to ensure that curriculum schedules and program design attends to the needs of English learners. So we have found that SWEL has kind of filled in a gap, and the gap was, are you either in the classroom and teaching, or have you jumped ship and now you're a leader and you're an administrator? There's really a need for something in the middle, and that's where this model comes in. How can you be a classroom teacher yet still be a leader, influence policy, create systems that work for your students because you know your students? And so the SWEL model really does position practicing teachers as leaders in their schools.